So Marvel's new Fantastic Four movie, First Steps, is officially out, and boy, is it getting people talking. The critics seem to be on board with its pretty different take, but the audience numbers, well, they're telling a whole other story. Okay, let's get into this, because to really understand what's happening with this new movie, we've got to go back and understand what made this team so revolutionary in the first place.
Okay, so the reviews, they're actually really good. Critics like Matt Zoller's sites are loving that the film just trusts you to keep up. It throws you right in the deep end, no hand-holding. It's being called smart, thoughtful, and a real cut above your standard blockbuster.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because for all that critical praise, there's a huge disconnect. The box office is painting a very, very different picture.
So let's try to piece this puzzle together. On one side, you've got all this praise for the movie's unique, character-focused story, and on the other, a serious problem with how it's actually performing.
Get ready for this number, because it is a big one. 66%. That's the drop in the domestic box office in just its second weekend. That is a huge fall. I mean, one of the steepest drops for any Marvel movie, ever. And it's a pretty clear sign that something just isn't connecting with the general public.
And you know, this is what all the box office analysts are pointing to. Scott Mendelson says it pretty bluntly, that the MCU is becoming a for-fans-only affair. And the data backs that up, showing that the people who did go were the die-hard Marvel fans, not your casual moviegoer. It suggests that the movie's greatest strength, this really deep character drama, might also be its biggest weakness at the box office.
You know, this isn't the first time the Fantastic Four has had a tough time on the big screen, which really makes you wonder, why? What is it about this team, in their DNA, that makes them so different from other heroes? To answer that, we gotta jump in the time machine and head all the way back to 1961.
Before 1961, the idea of a superhero was pretty simple, right? But when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the Fantastic Four, they didn't just make a new team. They basically kick-started a revolution. They introduced a totally new and frankly monstrous kind of hero.
And this right here, this is the key to the whole thing. Before Marvel really hit its stride in the 60s, your typical hero, think about early Superman, was basically a god. Perfect, simple morals, and his job was to keep everything just the way it is. But the Marvel Age heroes, they were the exact opposite. They were flawed, they were angsty, and a lot of the time, their powers made them feel like monsters. Their own bodies were a source of constant trauma and anxiety.
There's actually a great term for this, the monstrous superhero. The whole idea is that their powers aren't a gift, they're a curse. I mean, really think about it. Reed Richards is stretched into these bizarre shapes. Sue Storm literally fades out of existence. Johnny Storm is a walking ball of fire. And poor Ben Grimm is trapped inside a body of rock, terrified of his own reflection. They are, in a very real way, monsters.
So you gotta ask, right? Why monsters? What was in the water in 1961? Well, Lee and Kirby weren't just pulling this stuff out of thin air. These new, troubled heroes were a direct reflection of the terrifying new world their readers were actually living in.
The Fantastic Four's origin is absolutely soaked in the atomic age. They get their powers from cosmic radiation, just years after the world saw the devastating power of the atomic bomb and the dawn of nuclear energy. And that is not a coincidence. It tapped right into this widespread public fear about this incredible, invisible new power that could build cities or destroy the whole world, a power that could change you from the inside out.
I mean, just look at the cover of their very first issue. This is not a hero saving a citizen. It's chaos. It's been called monsters fighting monsters. And look at the public in the background. They're not cheering. They are running in absolute terror. This was so radically different from the clean, heroic images people were used to.
And this new anxiety wasn't just about external threats like nuclear war. It was also about internal ones. The whole Cold War era was defined by what historians call containment culture, a deep, deep fear of the enemy within. There was all this social pressure to conform, to maintain that perfect traditional family, and to police any kind of behavior that seemed different or off.
And that fear of things collapsing from the inside, that is exactly what makes the Fantastic Four so revolutionary. Because the biggest threat they ever really faced wasn't Dr. Doom, it wasn't some planet-eating cosmic being, it was themselves.
This is exactly what a lot of critics are picking up on in the new movie. The real story isn't about saving the world. It's about the messy, complicated, and deeply human drama of a family just trying to hold it all together.
I mean, just look at the problems they were dealing with in the original comics. They argued about money, they had marital spats, they struggled with fame.
Reed was emotionally distant, locked in his lab. Sue felt ignored and invisible, sometimes literally. These weren't superhero problems, these were people problems. And focusing on that kind of internal domestic drama was totally new for comics.
So when First Steps makes the central plot about Sue's pregnancy and the birth of their son, Franklin, that is not some modern reinvention. That is the original DNA of the Fantastic Four. It's taking that internal, family-based anxiety that defined them in the 1960s and putting it right up there, front and center.
Okay, so let's bring this all the way back to our original question. If this intense focus on family drama is the absolute core of the Fantastic Four, does that just mean they're destined to be for fans only?
We started with this critique, right? That the movie's box office problem is a failure to appeal to a wide audience. But after looking at all this history, maybe we need to reframe the entire problem.
What if this isn't a new problem? What if it's not a problem at all? What if it's just who they are? From their very first comic, the Fantastic Four were designed to be different. They were created to explore messy relationships, family conflict, and the trauma of having a body that feels alien. They were never, ever about simple wish fulfillment heroics.
Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. Perhaps the issue isn't that the new film is for fans only, but that the Fantastic Four, by their very nature, have always been for a different kind of fan. And in our modern blockbuster world that demands these massive, simple movies with universal appeal, maybe the real question we should be asking is this: is there still a place for heroes who are more human than they are super?